My official prediction for Ciryl Gane versus Tai Tuivasa. Tuivasa. Now, I have a hard time reconciling that within my own mind. Because Ciryl Gane is better. A lot better. And isn't that the question? If you're asking who's going to win between Y and Z, aren't we just identifying who's better and then that becomes your answer? Usually, yeah. Yeah, it does. But there's a lot of intangibles and there's a lot of factors here, and I'm not sure that you guys are considering them. First off, home court advantage is a real thing to an extent. It's not at all as it's advertised and shoved to people. When the Patriots fight in New England, it's not the thing that's the thing that they say within the city to get people to buy tickets and come down. Hey, you can really help your guy. They're just trying to make revenue. It's not as real of a thing as gets advertised. Like most things, it gets advertised to you. But there's an extent. Now, contrary to popular belief, that home turf does not help your team to be better. But it will take away from the other side if the other side has that type of mindset. If he has to be cheered for, if he just has to have people saying nice things to him the day of the event, right? If you're a wimp, it's going to hurt you. And we see it time and time again. Okay. I can't put that hex on Tuivasa because I've seen him do it. I saw him go into Houston, where Derek Lewis is king. And I saw him prevail in a fight that he dealt with adversity. I just can't put that on Tuivasa, and that's who it's going to affect. Those screaming Frenchmen are not going to make Ciryl fight better. As much as if he wins and he's going to thank you and tell you it was all due to you, I'm the one that's right, okay? So I can't factor that in. The bigger thing here, and perhaps the biggest, but it's not being told this way. There's something to be said for momentum, and every fighter who loses will question himself to a degree. And we've seen it go both ways, but we've never seen it run sideways. When a guy tastes defeat, he either gets a bounce because now he is remotivated, now he has learned, now he is hungry again. That's very real. Or a guy gets down in the dumps. We've never seen it just go sideways where that loss and that first loss didn't affect the guy. Never it goes one way or the other, and we're left to guess. There's a question mark. That's okay. Guys deal with it all the time, but this is going to be Ciryl Gane's time to deal with it. Oh, and by the way, in a main event on home soil, which adds a level of pressure. In addition, he's the favorite meaningfully. I don't know that those things factor in. It leaves a question mark, and he's taking on a great competitor. Okay, Tuivasa, by comparison, is taking on a great fighter. Ciryl Gane is taking on a great competitor. And when a match turns out to be harder than you thought it was going to be, you're now on who the competitor is. Who's going to dig deep and who's going to keep on pushing? I have not seen evidence that Ciryl Gane is not also that guy. I see very good things from Ciryl. I'm a Ciryl believer, and the only reason I'm down on him is because he did such an abysmal job of his end of the bargain of building an anticipation for his fight with Francis. I'm down on him for that. I'm down on him for being a champion of the world who was 15-0 and never been taken down and just pushed the Predator further than anybody had ever pushed the Predator, and then going and burying his head in the sand instead of building and adding to that. Talking about what he's going to do. Talking about he's the last man standing. Talking about I go out of here, I go home, I go into practice the next day. Francis goes into a contract dispute after he gets out of surgery. For Francis Ngannou to come out and need surgery on his knee. Oh, and by the way, Ciryl had him in a leg lock within the fight, and to take absolutely no credit. I mean, it's just annoying. I don't think that's any reason that you guys are going to get on board with. I'm sharing my perspective of why I'm a little bit down on him. That is where this comes from. Does that have anything to do with the fight? It's a little bit of a different question. So maybe I got a little biasy going on here. But the thing with Tuivasa, okay, is he's coming off momentum on a positive swing. Ciryl is the opposite direction. Very relevant because you don't see this a lot. There is a policy, right? It's not a rule. There is a policy. Within MMA, the guys who won their last fight take on other guys who won their last fight, and guys who lost their last fight take on guys who lost their last fight. That rule is being broken. And you don't see this a lot, so you don't have a whole lot to juxtapose this with. You do have examples, but you don't have a whole lot of them. They're few and far between. So Ciryl, who's coming off defeat and the loss of a championship, versus Tuivasa, who's running red hot. What do you do with that? It's an intangible. What do you do with it? I don't know that Ciryl has taken on a street fighter. I don't know that he even did that in his kickboxing day. Those guys are pretty polished. Checks and balances and the way you match some of those up. And yeah, you have varying skills, but you still have two guys taking on a street fighter. He's going to hit him. He's going to kick him. Tuivasa just doesn't care. How many times Tuivasa gets kicked or he gets punched is not going to detract him from what he is then there to do, which is to step in and hit you really hard. Most guys it would. Most guys fall apart. You pick a guy apart, you frustrate him, you hit him 6, 7, 8 times, he hasn't touched you once. Ooh, frustration starts to set in. I don't predict that that's going to happen here. And it's an interesting spot. I think that the whole match is very interesting. I think that it's a very big fight. You have the number 1 guy taking on the number 4 guy. The number 1 guy has plenty of fans. As a matter of fact, he's fighting at home in a sold-out arena. He gets credit for that. Oh, by the way, Tuivasa is the biggest star the heavyweight division even has. Like, this is a big fight. And I feel as though it's not being talked about, not because you don't appreciate it, not because you're not looking forward to it. I feel as though it's not being talked about because the people that would do the talking don't want to answer the follow-up question of why are they fighting? What are you going to do if the number 1 guy takes out the number 4 guy? Because in any other division and at any other time, that guy is going to go and fight for a belt. That guy is going to go into a massive contest because he remains number 1. The number 1 guy doesn't stop the number 4 guy, just so you understand. Right? You don't have championship fights and one guy stops the other guy. They're competitive. They're hard. Don't think you have to correct me. They're competitive. They're hard. Number 1 guy shuts off the number 4 guy just by example. Something big happened, but that's not the situation here. That's not even what's being looked at. Matter of fact, something else is being looked at. A guy who's never been in the division against a guy who just got knocked out within the division, that's being looked at to sidestep the number 1 guy who just stopped the number 4 guy. That's a very possible scenario. But played in reverse, the number 4 guy who also happens to be the biggest star within the division just took out number 1. He's going to slide up. What do you do with him? That would also call for a championship match. Tell me one other time where that didn't happen. You tell me one time, number 4 stopped number 1 and did not draw in to a title fight. Tell me one time. Take all the time you need. You're not going to come up with it, but that's not what's happening here. For sure, it's not. And it's an interesting spot, and I think it could. I think it's incumbent upon them. But counting on Ciryl Gane to make the right move in the media is like counting on death. So it is very different. Ciryl Gane's got 50% chance of winning just by the odds, but so does Tuivasa. And there is something to be said for momentum. There's also something to be said for championship fights. There's something to be said for that endurance that for sure Ciryl has, that Tuivasa may not. I don't predict you have a long drawn-out evening here. I predict you have a finish and you have an ass whipping. I just got to make a guess what way that is going to go. I'm taking Tuivasa.